Good evening, and I just want to say welcome once again to another exciting day. It's always beautiful for you to allow us to come into your homes, and we don't take it lightly. So thank you so much for tuning in. We're still just trying to ensure that we give you a few tidbits of wisdom and some of the experiences that we've had so that you can maximize where you are in your single life. Because that's a beautiful time when you can really get where you need to be with your relationship to God. Mm-hmm. And so it gives you a little more leverage to make some good things happen. One of the things that we wanted to talk about today, and I guess before we get on that subject, let me just pause. And I got ahead of myself. Angie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Much
Good.
Better today. Thank
Good.
you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Every day is a good day, in my opinion.
It is.
And so I treat every day like it's my last day.
All right.
Because one day, it will be my last day, right?
I know. We don't like to think about that, but that's true.
So, I try to enjoy every day. That's a part of my maximizing thing, is to try to make sure every day is a day that I'm enjoying, just in case.
Okay.
But, sometimes I think that we don't always think about, what causes our days to deteriorate.
True.
And a lot of that is when we have situations where the people in our lives or the circumstances in our lives are not going the way we want them to go. Right?
That's true. Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people, when they're on a road somewhere, say you're working some things out, you're trying to find your purpose or whatever you're trying to do, reach a goal. If there's stumbling blocks that get between you and where you're trying to go, a lot of people will become depressed.
True.
Because they have things pushing them back. When you have some obstacles in your way or people opposing where you're trying to go. Some people would take that and cause them to back up or cause them to become depressed or second guess some things.
Yes.
And what I have noted is that anytime I'm faced with an obstacle, for me, that's not a time to back up.
Okay.
To me, that's a time to go harder.
Okay.
Because I recognize that, that the devil is not going to just sit back and let me obtain anything.
That's true.
He's going to try to knock me down. So today I'm thinking, we need to probably just talk with our viewers a little bit about, how do you use your opposition to strengthen yourself? And how do you, rather than being upset because somebody comes against you, how do you take that and rechannel that energy? So whatever they're doing to bring you down, you can now use that to overcome and even be better on the other end. I've heard people say it like this: you can't make a diamond without pressure.
That's true.
Right?
That is true.
So how do we use that to make a diamond out of ourselves? Okay, how do we do that? How do we take that and allow that to build character in us?
Wow. I think I deal with this quite a bit. Well, I will say allowing it to develop our character as far as building patience and self-control, even though, and a lot of that is easier said than done. I can definitely say that. Because sometimes opposition can also be issues within ourselves versus things that are going on the outside of us, the adversity we may be experiencing at work or with another person. But the real thing is to recognize what it is you're dealing with first, so you can deal with those things. But as far as developing your self-controls, a lot of times, especially if it's another person, we tend to want to do just that, take control and not allow God to deal with things in the way that he wants to deal with them and in his timing. We want, for me, I can honestly say I get really anxious and I need to see something happening right now. And that's not always the case at all. And when these things are happening, when I'm having these feelings of anxiety or just angst, I should say, then I'm really just kind of almost in a bit of turmoil, so to speak. And I think I do that to myself a lot. So I think we have to recognize if we're doing, bringing a lot of things on ourselves. If so, then just begin to pray about things and ask God which direction, how we should handle things, but if he doesn't answer, also recognize when we need to leave it alone.
Okay. So if I get where you're coming from, and I think I do, but let me just paraphrase it to make sure I'm catching it. So you're saying then that if we are facing obstacles, rather than seeing that as a negative, look at that as an opportunity. And that's an opportunity to develop something in ourselves.
Yes.
And one of the things that we can develop is that sense of patience and self-control. Because if, I can't agree with you more. I think that most of us, patience is a thing that we are a little short on.
I know I am.
Especially when you're trying to reach a goal. But that's something that we need to develop. You're right. Because if you don't have patience, you tend to step out and make decisions hastily.
You do.
Go in directions hastily rather than really assessing. So I think sometimes you're right. That can help you develop that sense of, let me stop trying to rush through it and let me think about it a little more and settle into it a little bit. So that makes so much sense. When you think about it that way. And so I guess the self-control aspect is a part of patience. Is that where you're coming from? Or is it something totally different?
It's all in the same self-control in a sense of learning. It teaches me discipline for the most part, because I do want to take control and just make things happen when I want them to happen, which goes into patience as far as God's timing, but also learning to kind of stand down when it comes to some people. Because for me, prime example, my son, or I will say this, when my adult children come to me and they speak on things that may be bothering them, then I want to take over and speak up for them, when in all reality I know they're adults. So I'm trying to teach them to learn to communicate in respectful ways. And they do, but at the same time, they know that it may cause conflict. So it brings me anxiety because they're hurting, and now I'm hurting, I'm upset. And I want to step out and hey, just take care of it for them. But that's not the answer.
Right.
So it teaches me to kind of just stand down and let's just let things play out and let's see what happens.
Right.
And it works out.
Yeah. And I think one of the things for me, and as you was talking, I was thinking about that as well, is that for me, the self-control, when people come against me, is the self-control. It helps me develop that which allows me to not choke them to death.
Okay.
I'm saying it in humor, but for me, that's the self-control.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, if I'm doing something that I know is beneficial to myself and others around me, and I have people that are trying to, for selfish reasons or for whatever reasons, going against the program, fleshly side of me, wants to rise up.
Most definitely.
It wants to rise up. And so for me, when opposition comes at me now, because, and it's because it came lightweight at first, and now it comes heavyweight. So I have allowed the lightweight opposition to help strengthen my self-control, because now I recognize that your opposition does not stop progress.
That's true.
That your opposition is because of your own sense of insecurity. I think to me that was the big thing. It helped me to see that most people that come against you is because of their own insecurity.
True.
It's insecurity and jealousy. When people are trying to ensure that their worth is at a certain place, they want to put your worth down, and they want to say you can't accomplish this, or you shouldn't do that, or if you have, like one thing, for example, let's say if you tell someone you're going on vacation, you say, well, I'm going to Dubai, then they'll say something like this, well, I don't know why you want to go over there. It's going to be hot. It's 120 degrees in the shade over in Dubai, to try to, bring you down a little bit. But what I've come to realize is you really don't think going to Dubai is bad. you're just jealous that you're not going to Dubai.
Exactly.
So you want to make it seem like I'm not going to have a good time. When I go there, I'm not going to Dubai, and I'm not saying that's a real thing.
Gotcha.
But that's just an example of, for me, it allows me to exhibit that kind of self-control, because now I realize that what you're doing is really because of your own sense of insecurity.
That's true.
I got you. You know, so so my job now becomes, well, let me help you see yourself better. Because if you can see yourself better, then that means you're going to get out of my way.
Okay.
Because you're going to be concentrating on doing things for yourself rather than trying to stop me from doing what I want to do. You know, and so, you know, one of the things that, you know, you also noted that I think that those who are listening and watching will probably benefit from, and that is, you know, what for some people when they get, I guess, pushback. For some people when they get pushback, they just fold, right? How do we help people to appreciate that the worst thing you can do when you're facing opposition is not to handle it? You know, because some people won't handle it. They won't do it. Kind of just they stop cold and that's it from them. So what do people who have that tendency? What should they be looking at? What should they be doing?
You mean in a sense of, I don't want to say passive behavior, but somewhat. Is that what you're saying? They just kind of back off altogether.
Yeah, because some people, when opposition comes, if you don't face opposition, let's say, right, then it can have a tendency to make things more complicated or worse than what they would be had you dealt with it, right? So I guess what I'm looking at and I'm asking is that what for that person, how can we help them not to allow that to fester?
Well,
you know
I think
I
got what you're saying. Sometimes we'll fall back because we're afraid to do. I wouldn't even necessarily say afraid. We just don't want the fallout or the conflict that comes along with it. But holding things also can cause stress on us, anxiety, things like that. And that affects our health. You know, basically you're turning everything that's going on outside, you're turning it inward. And we don't recognize how things like that really do affect us. I can honestly say personally, just even seeing my chiropractor when he tells me you're always in fight or flight mode, and I got to get you out of that. And I'm like, I don't know how I got there. You know, I don't, but it happens. So, and that's one of those things to either where I'm going to come out, you know, roaring, and I try not to because sometimes I feel like I can't. If I start, I'm not going to be able to pull back. So sometimes we might just kind of just take a step back, but then at the same time, it might make us appear to be weak, and we're not. It's just that we're trying to find some balance, but we're really not balanced because we're either on one end of the spectrum or the other. So I'm having to learn to pick and choose my battles and know what's important, and once again to pray about things and allow God to. If He doesn't answer me, then I know just leave it alone. And you've even said before, sometimes we have to hold our tongue, but it just depends on what we're holding.
Right. Yeah. So if I am holding, how does that impact me? Because certainly we shouldn't, right? You know, and I'm taking it you're saying that, you know, when we're faced with opposition, that and sometimes when you're faced with those people, you know, who are opposing you, it can cause a lot of anxiety. It can cause, you know, hurt feelings. It can cause pain, anger, all this kind of stuff. So how do we deal with that? I mean, how do you deal with that? How do you help someone who has been holding all that in? How do you help them to see the damage it's doing to them? And how do you help them make that turn so that they are not in a state of, I guess,
flux all the time, maybe?
Well, if you treat the opposition if you ignore it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of looking at what you just recently said.
Mm-hmm.
If I ignore the opposition and hold it all on the inside,
Mm-hmm.
right, it becomes damaging to me.
It does.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question then that we have to examine is how do we help people who are doing that see the damage that is causing them? How can they identify? How do you identify that I am that person?
Mm-hmm.
What do you look at to say within yourself? Do you say to yourself, well, I'm in knots and I'm holding on to anger? Is that a sign that I should look for? That I'm holding on to my anger? Should I note that when my blood pressure is shooting up? Should I go with my anxiety level? What do I look for? And then once I identify it, what do I do? How do I get to a point where I'm doing something about it so it doesn't, as you said, adversely impact health and all those things?
Mm-hmm. Well, as far as looking for it, for me, I just recognize that there's something on me, so to speak, that I can't seem to shake. Mm-hmm. I'm agitated, or like you said earlier, sometimes maybe even depressed, or just feeling like I need reassurance. There are things going on that I can't necessarily pinpoint until I actually sit down. Sometimes you just, to process my feelings, there are certain things that I may do to help pull me out of that, to try to understand what's really going on right now. So, and I guess we could say coping mechanisms, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And for me, it could be journaling, just writing down what I'm feeling right now. But you have to recognize, first of all, that something's not right. Once again, if you are faced with something and you're just decided to back down and not say anything, mm-hmm. then you do have to recognize that's the first thing. And once again, like I said, agitation, just different things. Sometimes it could affect your work relationships, mm-hmm. Love relationships, just relationships with other people. And you might not recognize it, but they might, that mm-hmm. something's going on mm-hmm. with you. Mm-hmm. So, and it just could be a change in your behavior mm-hmm. and things like that. So when you do start to recognize these things, and just take a step back. And for me, like I said, once again, processing, I write. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a writer to mm-hmm. to write down what you are feeling or what has happened. Start there, writing mm-hmm. down, this happened today. And as you start to write, it's going to start to flow. It just starts to come out. This happened today. And before you know it, you're saying, I felt this way. It made me feel this way. And for me, I got deeper, or I go deeper. Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, I'm the thing that I'm really worried about within all of that opposition and adversity, it comes out. And mm-hmm. once again, like I said, sometimes you may need to be reassured for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. You might be looking to be prioritized depending on whatever's going on in that situation. It'll help you dig to the very bottom of what's underneath all of everything that you are facing. Okay. So, mm-hmm.
Well, there's something else you said that I want you to elaborate on a little bit.
Okay.
Because, you said that, one of the key factors that you have to guard against is transferring your own anxiety to the wrong place. Yes. Right. So true. Like, mm-hmm. Person A may be the one opposing me, mm-hmm. but rather than me dealing with person A, I'm letting all that come out on person exactly C, mm-hmm. who really is innocent. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with mm-hmm. it, and actually may even be trying to help me. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So how do we deal with that, and how do we guard against that? Because what you said is so true. Because most of the time, what I find in counseling is that people tend to lash out at those who they think can take it, as opposed to letting the person who is hurting them mm-hmm. or opposing them, rather than dealing with that person, they'll hit someone else who, and so for no reason, all of a sudden, the other person is wondering, where did this come from?
You become a punching bag almost for others if you allow it. Mm-hmm. I can honestly say that was me for years, and I hate to I don't want to put it out there like that, but it was.
Mhm.
And I'll even say, I'm gonna be real with you. My ex-husband, he saw a video last night. Anyways, but I felt like that's exactly what I was.
Mhm.
Whenever things didn't go right in his world or something was going on, he would reach out to me, but he would lash out.
Mhm.
So I began to recognize, you know what? You're not, or because if you can't speak up over here for whatever reason, you're not going to unleash on me.
Mhm.
So you do have to recognize that and that takes a healthy person to recognize that's what you're doing to other people.
Mhm.
So even when you know you're going through something, and I can use work as an example as well, working for a utility company, when customers come in to pay the bill, sometimes they do let loose on you, not recognizing, maybe they just had a bad day.
Mhm.
When they got up that morning, something has happened with the spouse, or, maybe the car wasn't working right, whatever.
Mhm.
But then they come in and you may say just one thing, maybe the bill was a little higher than they expected,
Mhm.
and they just kind of let go. So you have to learn not to take it personal also for the other person on the other end, depending on what you're doing. And just recognize if all you did was just wake up this morning in a good mood, and all of a sudden you're experiencing this blowout that know that it has nothing to do with you.
Right. And I brought that up because, again, you mentioned it, but I wanted us to talk about it a little bit, because oftentimes I think what happens is if I'm faced with opposition and I misdirect, who I should be dealing with, then it will cause me to alienate people who would normally be my support system. Right? And then because if person A is the one that's really pushing my buttons, but I start to then lash out at person C just because they're my friend and they're the ones that I'm talking to, but that's the one that should have been my support system. That's the one that really is the one that would normally be lifting me up. But then they're going to get sick of that, And so what happens if we don't identify that early and make sure we don't fall into that trap, the very thing that we should be looking for to help us, will walk away from us.
That's true.
And I think that oftentimes people unknowingly, that's what they do. They lash out at and actually when I was taking psychology, they said that was a sign of mental illness.
Really? That proves my point.
But when you hurt the ones that help you and help the ones that hurt you, and oftentimes that's what happens, because some people, when they get opposition, they align themselves with the opposition for reasons, because that becomes easier.
Yes.
Just the easier road. For example, let's say you're on the job, right? And there's someone on the job it's always somebody on the job that has a attitude that is out of line and out of character with team building. Well, but a person that is non-confrontational, for example, will cower down and begin to align themselves with that person, because that's the path of least resistance. But in doing so, all the other people that used to support that person now says, "Oh, you're going to leave us and go over to this person who's now," And I'll say this, and I hope people don't get offended by it, but that was something that happened frequently. Doing pre-civil rights. And during slavery time, right? That you would get the slave that worked in the house, the big house, right? And that person, and I think Malcolm X said it best. He said that person, when the master gets sick, say, "We sick, master," right? Well, we ain't really sick, but you're aligning yourself with the person that's beating you down, and you're telling on the other folk that normally support you. So now you're telling master, "Hey, Johnny getting ready to run away." Those kind of things. Now, I'm taking it to the extreme, but I'm saying that happens in real life.
It does.
And so the people that you you really would normally want to pull to you, you start pushing them away.
True.
And just like you said in the example you gave, right, here you were, you were the support system, right?
Definitely.
You're the one that is going to be there to help the goals be reached. You're the one that's going to help the bills get paid and help all this other stuff going on. But if the person is lashing out at you, not because you've done anything wrong, it's because they are having, there's opposition elsewhere.
That's it.
Opposition elsewhere. And that happens frequently with people. That's why I said I wanted to stay there for a little bit, because it happens frequently. And I think the people who are facing opposition need to understand that, because if you think about most domestic violence situations, for example, most domestic violence situations are created from that environment.
That's true.
Right, where you on the job and there's opposition on the job, and you come home and you can't beat your boss up.
That's true.
So you come home and the least little thing your child does, rather than you loving on the child, you're mad at the child.
Yeah.
And all the child was doing was acting like a child. You come home and you're tired and you're watching TV and the child is playing in the floor, and then all of a sudden you lash out. Cut all that noise out. Get out of here. And we're that's misplaced anger, because the child didn't do anything with being a child.
That's it.
And so I think we have to recognize that and do what we said earlier, and that is make sure you take the opposition and channel that anger in the right way, and channel that frustration in the right way, and become healthier because of it.
Yeah. A lot of people don't, but it always starts with owning your truth, being able to recognize that you are that person, depending on what side you're on, and being able to apologize also, but not everyone can do that always. And then I would like to also say, if you are facing opposition, to take whatever you're going through, use it to help someone else. Don't just hold it. Even if you can't, like if you don't have a support system to go to as far as helping you cope with what you're dealing with, use that to help someone else. We're always faced with challenges and different things every day. So a lot of times we want to wait until things are perfect to move forward, to give a testimony or help someone else. And none of us are perfect, and things will never be perfect. There's always something that we're going to be going through. So we have to find ways to deal with opposition, adversity, just life in general. So I would say when God is challenging us, molding us and helping us grow, and then he's also sanctifying us at the same time. We're going through all this at the same time. I know I do. I feel like it's never perfect for me, but like you said, it's about the way you make each day. Sometimes it's a little tougher than others. So, but I do know when I'm encouraging someone else, I'm encouraging myself as well.
Right.
So that's the one thing that I think we should all do, encourage others even while we're going through.
All right. Well, listen, that's good sound advice. And I mean, even though we talk about maximizing singleness, I mean, that's good for everybody to get a piece of, I think, because all of us go through times when we face opposition, and as Puffy Combs said, what don't break you or make you, right?
That's true.
And so you want to use that to strengthen you and not to deflate you.
That's
you know,
true.
when you have opposition, you want to channel that. Even if you're angry, channel your anger.
That's right.
Don't allow your anger to bring you down, but channel that anger and change that anger into a forcefulness that says, I'm going to be best, I'm going to be better, and I'm going to show you were wrong about who I am and what I am and how I deal with things. So, hey, listen, I want to say thank you all for letting us into your home today. Our time is always, before you know it, the time is always moving fast, but we appreciate you being a part of the program. And as always, we're going to close out by letting Angie wrap things up.
I just wrapped it up.
That's the wrap
That was
up?
it. Yeah.
All right. Well, we got to wrap up. So
Uh-huh.
I'm going to leave you with this little tidbit of wisdom that I heard earlier today that I think you might want to take to the bank.
Okay.
Right? And this is what I heard earlier today.
What's
It's
that?
not new, it's old stuff.
Okay.
But, it says this: he who knows and knows not that he knows is asleep. Wake him.
Okay.
He who knows not but thinks that he knows is a fool. Shun him.
Okay.
He who knows not but knows that he does not know, lift him and help him.
Okay.
He who knows and knows that he knows is wise. Follow him. God bless you. Have a good evening.
I like that.